So welcome back to another video. I am going to talk about something that I've seen happening with these big executives who leave these companies and then talk about how things are just so expensive, you know? It must be difficult when you have an elevator in your house, the cost of making video games, and it's just so difficult. And somehow you're supposed to worry about that. It's your job to worry about it. And I think to myself, no, it's their job to worry about it. It's your job simply to just say, I think I'll purchase this or I won't purchase it. The idea that things are becoming too expensive is baffling to me because as somebody who's been playing video games for a long time, when I was a kid, games were 50, 60, 70, even 80 doll hairs. But today, $70 is the maximum you can ask for the standard version of a video game. It's why you see these ridiculous, super extended, hyper realism, exclusive versions of a game. I couldn't even think for a second there. It happens when you get older. And they're like $100 or $90. You look at Avowed, it's $95 for a steelbook for a game that doesn't even have a physical disc or release at all. So here's the problem, and I want to talk about PlayStation in particular because I don't know what Xbox is doing, and at this point, I'm really not that interested. And you know where I stand with Nintendo. They've gotten this right a long time ago, and they've cultivated themselves into a true brand, something that we live and breathe all around the world with theme parks, movies, toys, games, board games, video games, all that stuff. But when it comes to PlayStation has cultivated a very specific type of audience. And if you're one of them, think about what that is. You have to have the cutting edge graphically. You have to have voiceover from these actors who think that they're, Hollywood stars or something like that, right? You got Troy Baker is the only voice actor now for any game, much like Nolan North back in the day. Then you have to have motion captured studios because God forbid you should hire just an animator who can like hand draw stuff and make it look like a character's moving. So you have to have all of that if you're a PlayStation gamer right now and into the future. So that's before you even know if the game is actually a video game, is actually good. And take a look at Last of Us 2, right? I mean, Last of Us 2 won all these awards. People swear it's the greatest game ever. I'm not going to say it's a bad game, but think about what Last of Us 2 delivers gameplay-wise versus, the cutscenes and the story and the motion capture and the facial animation and the 4K 60 frames per second visuals and the individual blades of grass that move when Ellie's ass cheek brushes against them. There's much better stealth games out there than the stealth that's presented in Last of Us. Third-person shooting? Don't even think about it. It's not even in the discussion when it comes to the best third-person shooters. Gameplay-wise, the gameplay hook, I mean, it's okay. So, at this point, Sony's made a bed that's very expensive to create. And the people that lay in that bed, they don't want to spend any more money than $70 hairs. And when you're in that position and things keep getting more and more expensive and you're unwilling to sort of scale down a bit, I mean, think about Astrobot. How much money do you think it costs to create Astrobot? Nowhere near the amount of money that it costs to create Spider-Man 2 or Last of Us 2 or the upcoming Wolverine. And I'm not saying these games aren't important, but if you're out there talking about the industry and the price of things and how, it's getting more and more expensive and how can we possibly keep doing this, ask yourself this question. Back in the day on PlayStation 2, how much do you think it cost to make a Jak and Daxter game? Now that's a game for a gamer. It's a video game. There's no message in it. It's not trying to get you to vote a certain way, which is ridiculous when it comes to a video game. You don't have like 100 people working on a game and one person decides to just keep running their mouth, dragging down the game like what's happening with Avowed. It's a game. You play the game. The gameplay hook is very interesting. There are things to do as a gamer. Why couldn't Sony create a game like that, make it a little bit better, but much less money than these huge AAA games? And the answer is because they've made that bed for themselves. They've made that bed for themselves. You won't accept anything other than top of the line, cutting edge, bleeding edge, voice acting, motion capture, resolution, frame rate, everything that has nothing to do with actually enjoying a gameplay hook. Fun. Remember that in a video game? So when I see Sean Layden complaining about video games, I think to myself, didn't you used to work for China and Tencent? And how much money did they pay you to just look the other way when they were stealing intellectual property and cloning it, like the upcoming Horizon game? But now you don't work for Tencent, but you got a problem with Western developed video game cycles, and you were the one that led this system and this company to this place. So instead of complaining about it, how about we figure out a way to either tell people, listen, this is the only entertainment medium that hasn't scaled with inflation. How much money is a movie ticket? But you won't pay more than $70 for a video game. That isn't going to last. And the only thing, look, something's got to give, right? You ever hear that expression, something has to give? It's either going to be a severe scaling back of what AAA is, which I'm fine with. How much money do you think it cost to create, develop, pay the people to work on the game, manufacture it, and ship it and release it? Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Combine that money, and you're not even at half of the money it cost to create Spider-Man 2 or Last of Us 2 or the upcoming Wolverine. And how many copies did those games sell versus these huge budget AAA games? So it can be done if you focus in on what people actually will respond to. Gameplay, fun, innovation, creativity. You can still have amazing looking visuals, but if that's all you're going for, if that's it, Last of Us 2, stealth gameplay, okay. Third person shooting, okay. But numerous examples in those two genres of games that are a million times better. And the rub is, well, Troy Baker's a great voice actor. Did you see the motion capture? The story. I don't know. I don't think that bed that Sony made is going to hold all of these people. Eventually, it's going to give out and collapse. The headboard can't take the pounding anymore. So I think eventually Sony's going to have to figure out a way to cut these costs. And you're already starting to see it with the let's copy Nintendo again handheld route. Now, I think that's smart. I think Sony should make a handheld that's natively playable. I don't think they're ever going to have a handheld that plays, all of their current generation games, like a PS6 that's only a hybrid handheld. They're always going to have a huge system because they're stuck in this. We've got to be cutting edge. We've got to be cutting edge. It's why you see the Pro at $700. People are going to buy it. Not a lot of people, but they're going to buy it. But they need something in between to recoup all of these costs. They have to do it. And it's less about games now that are creative and more about hardware that's pushing a difference that very few people even see or care about. And I'm not saying the PS5 Pro isn't important or isn't great, but it's not great for a lot of people. It's just not. How many times can we go to the well of Last of Us 2, 4K 60, 8K 30? Look at the difference. And you're like, can you zoom in a little bit more? So something has to give. And I think Sony is in the worst position because they're the leader when it comes to cutting edge. Microsoft, they haven't been competition for a long time. This idea that if Microsoft isn't around, the industry's going to fail because we need competition. Microsoft isn't competition. They have never been competition. The most competition. Let me disprove this idea that if there's no Microsoft and Xbox, there's no competition. The most competition the PlayStation ever had from Microsoft was what? The Xbox 360 launching a year earlier, selling a gazillion consoles, getting de facto exclusives. And what did Sony do with all of that competition? They launched the most expensive console to date, the PlayStation 3. The least amount of competition that Sony ever had from Microsoft and Xbox was what? The Xbox One. And what did they do? Did they say to themselves, we've got no competition here. Let's release a system that's $500. They released a system at $399 the PS4. It's not about competition. It's about what the market will bear. They're looking at the market, period. So, no, Microsoft not being around won't destroy the industry. Yes, Nintendo makes video games. Sony makes video games. In a sense, they're competing. But nobody's going to Super Kratos World and buying backpacks and lunch pails and food designed around characters and going on roller coasters designed around rides. They're not going to Nathan Drake World or Troy Baker Land. So Sony has to figure this out quickly. And I don't think they're going to. I think they're always going to be this home for cutting edge. But eventually, I think you've got to ask yourself, are you playing video games to look at them? Or are you playing video games to play them and do something different? What's different in Last of Us 2 from Last of Us 1? What gameplay innovations have happened? Did they even think about gameplay innovations? Or is it just go from point A to point B, look at a beautiful game, and do like things you've done before in other games, not as good like stealth and third-person shooting, but just win an award for story, voice acting, and whatever else that has absolutely nothing to do with gaming? That's the problem I have. And if I told myself this when I was in my 30s, like most of you out there are that are successful on YouTube and have these gaming channels, I wouldn't listen to it. Even in my early 40s, I wouldn't listen to it. But I promise you, you're going to get to the point as a gamer, playing games for 30 or 40 years, going back to the Atari or Pong before that. You're going to get to the place that I am, and you realize that you cut away everything else. And if the fruit at the bottom is just stale and rotten, all the other stuff doesn't matter. Sony's got to figure this out. And I'm not sure if they're going to. I'll be there for a PlayStation 6. Who knows? But can you imagine studios like Sucker Punch only making one proper PS5 game in a generation? Or Naughty Dog making one game each generation and it takes 5 or 6 years to get it? Versus 3 scaled down but incredibly creative games that they used to make. I would take those. I don't know about you. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one.